So for this presentation, I'm going to go over the EPA National Recycling Strategy, and within that strategy, there is grant funding for recycling infrastructure and education and outreach. Okay, so why are we here today? Basically, we're just going to share information about the transition to a circular economy, which is our vision for EPA, the bipartisan infrastructure law, which you'll hear referenced several times throughout this, the national recycling strategy, and grant opportunities related to those. And just so we're aware of, like, what do we mean when we're talking about a circular economy? So really, it's just the idea of reducing material use, which could include redesigning materials to be less resource intensive, as well as recapturing that waste as a resource to produce new products. So just feeding it back into the loop, essentially. We're going to go over some other things, like I said, the grant program, a little bit about the recycling toolkit that headquarters produced, as well as some other things like battery collection best practices. That's also a small component of this. All right, so what has been driving and shaping EPA's work on this? There's actually been quite a few legislative proposals that are tied to this, and tied to recycling and food waste education, things like that. We were essentially directed to develop a national recycling strategy back in 2020. We also developed a plastic strategy and reports on plastics through the Save Our Seas Act of 2020. We're collecting data on recycling and single-use plastics and working to issue grants under other efforts to support recycling in communities. Okay, and if you do want to look at this national recycling strategy, all you have to do is type that exactly into Google, EPA National Recycling Strategy. It will pull up a document. It's pretty lengthy, but it has a lot of information in it and gives you a good overview of basically like our circular economy and everything else that we have and our vision for recycling. And that was released a little over a year ago, back in November of 21. Okay, so for the National Recycling Strategy, it focuses on enhancing the municipal solid waste recycling system. It identifies stakeholder-led action so we can create a more resilient and stronger system. It also acknowledges that recycling is really only one part that is needed to achieve a circular economy, and we are committed to developing additional strategies, which we'll talk a little bit about. Okay, so I really like this graphic. Headquarters produced this. Basically, on the left, we have the bipartisan infrastructure law, which is basically where we get our directive for solid waste infrastructure recycling grants. That this bill is giving us the money for that, for infrastructure and for recycling education, as well as some money for battery collection. And then part of that is our circular economy strategy series. So we've already produced the national recycling strategy. That's our overall vision and goal. But there will be other strategy series. So those are focused on other key materials that we've identified, such as plastics, food waste, critical minerals and electronics, built environment. So think like construction and demolition debris, and textiles. Okay, and this is just a good general slide where you can see the grant support that is going to be available under the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I'm not going to read that to you because we're going to go over it a little bit more in depth. Okay, so for the infrastructure program, there's total funding of $275 million. So that brings it to $55 million per year from FY22 to 26. Basically, this is to help support improvements to recycling programs, post-consumer materials management, and waste management infrastructure. Okay, And what is the purpose of this? We already went through what gives us the authority under this, but it's to support improvements to local post-consumer materials management, which can include local municipal recycling programs, and it's to assist local waste management authorities in making improvements to those systems. And there are some eligibility requirements for this. It's going to be U.S. states and political subdivisions of states, different territories, the District of Columbia, federally recognized tribes. There is a lot of questions. So this is limited in who can apply for this. There are a lot of questions around what is a political subdivision, and headquarters has kind of given us some direction on that. So there can be some ambiguity. Obviously, like a city, like City of New Orleans, that would be a political subdivision of a state, but there could be other things. For example, like a housing authority may be able to be a political subdivision, but it's all going to come down to how that state defines it. So it is going to really just be a state-by-state basis on what a political subdivision is. And if there are any specific questions about that, I'll give you the resource for reaching out to headquarters for more insight into if you would be a political subdivision.
Hey, Jessica, this is Renee. I
Yeah.
was just going to mention for the group, there is a list of frequently asked questions up on the website now. And we can I'll put that link in the chat. Because some of the political subdivision questions do have come up, as Jessica said, a lot. What is that, and do I qualify, and things like that. So there's provided some examples. So I'll send a link to both the frequently asked questions documents, because I think those are going to be really helpful. As you think about applying.
Yes, thanks for that. And we can send those resources around too. Okay, so what infrastructure activities are eligible for funding? So it's very broad. Just know that it needs to be recycling infrastructure. It can't be anything related to we've had questions about like expanding landfills, things like that. It cannot be focused around anything having to do with putting waste in landfills and things like that. It needs to be infrastructure, and it needs to have a recycling component to it. There's a lot of other things this could cover too, just depending on your activities or what the grant would be for. But things like personnel and benefits could be included, supplies, equipment, contractual needs. It's pretty broad. It just really it captures a lot, but again, just has to be related to recycling infrastructure. All right, we're going to go over next for recycling education and outreach. So this grant is a little bit smaller. Total funding is $75 million. That is $15 million per year from FY22 to FY26. Basically, it's just to support education and outreach on consumer recycling and waste prevention, informing the public on what's accepted, so we can increase collection rates and decrease contamination. Okay, and there are a lot of ways in which this grant is different as well from the infrastructure grants. So basically, this will be awarded through a competitive process. I forgot to mention the infrastructure ones for like the states and political territories, tribes, etc. Those are not competitive. Education and outreach are. So basically, it's to implement public education for recycling, and it's to improve residential and community recycling programs.
Hey, Jessica. This is Renee. Sorry, just one clarifying point. So there is a non-competitive component to the SWIFR grant, and that's for states, states and tribes. States and territories. But SWIFR is competitive for the political subdivision. So that will be a competition for the political subdivision component. So just a little bit of a clarification there.
Yes, good to know. Okay, and then basically what we're talking about for something that's competitive is you will be competing with other entities if this is something you decide to go through, and also as regions with EPA, we're a little bit limited in what we can assist you with on these. So if you need clarification regarding any information, or if you have questions on the processes, we can help you with that. But as far as like giving you our opinion or helping you like with your strategy or developing a strategy, things like that, we wouldn't be able to do. Okay, and who is eligible for this is also a little bit different. So again, states, local government, tribes, all of those entities can apply. The difference here is nonprofits can apply. So that could be colleges, it could be nonprofit health organizations, etc. And also, you can't see it down here, but that says public-private partnerships. Okay.
So I would imagine Osner would qualify then as the nonprofit to be eligible for this. Would that be appropriate?
Correct. I would consider them eligible to apply.
And so also the city can apply to this one, but the last one we were talking about, neither of us could apply, right? That was coming through the state.
City of New Orleans would be eligible.
For both of these?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That was confusing.
And this is Robbie. I would just give a kind of a cautionary note to double check all the requirements laid out in the grant eligibility guidelines. And if it's not clear, reach out to the frequently asked questions or the headquarters contact. Because don't want to say, yes, you're absolutely eligible now without knowing the full extent of your structure and everything like that.
And can you all, is it public information who has applied or who is applying?
So no, that's not public information. And with the grants open, we're limited in what we can say, just for the simple fact that our headquarters office wants all of the information to be consistent. So that's why we were referring people to the nationally compiled frequently asked questions, and then also to the headquarters contacts. But like Jessica said, most likely I would be eligible as a nonprofit, but I would still just double check the eligibility requirements.
And this one is live? These,
Yes.
Are we talking about
Correct.
future grants, or are these actually open right now?
The education one is.
Okay.
No, actually, they're both open. Swiffer, the political subdivision grant is open. The state grant is open. The two Swiffer grants, the political subdivision and state, and then the education and outreach are open.
Okay. Thanks.
And as a nonprofit, absolutely double check to make sure like your structure, fits that nonprofit definition. But City of New Orleans, for sure, you are eligible for all for the political subdivision grant for Swiffer and education and outreach.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I wasn't aware the Swiffer one was ready, but I'm at the end I might let you talk a little bit more about that one. Okay, I'm gonna continue to go through.
Jessica,
Okay,
can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah,
Sorry, y'all. I joined a few minutes late. This is Dan Jotris with the Office of Resilience. Just based on that conversation, for awareness, the city is planning on submitting proposals to both of those programs, the Swiffer program and the outreach program.
Oh, great.
And we submitted our letters of intent for both of those yesterday.
Awesome. Yes. So we are accepting notices of intent currently at the moment. Okay, and just to jump into what are some of the activities under this program, it could be something like public service announcements, door-to-door campaigns, advertising, toolkits, any labeling or signs, information on benefits of recycling. It really encompasses a lot for this. Okay, and I was just going to give you an example. This is just a snapshot from grants.gov. Like, this grant opportunity is up and ready for the recycling education and outreach. So I just grabbed a screenshot of that to show you. And this is from headquarters as well. This is the estimated timeline. So right now we're in the, or we're a little past, I guess, posting the notice of funding opportunities. This goes into January of 2023. So applicants are submitting application packages. In the summer, fall of next year, we're going to start awarding those grants and projects can begin. I'm sorry, I'm missing the ones below. So December of this year, so applicants may submit intent to apply. And then in the spring, sorry, I kind of went out of order. The spring of 23, reviewing and evaluating applications, and then summer, fall, awarding grants and projects begin. I think the grants headquarters say have project timeline can be up to 3 years. So we have a lot of questions around that. Okay, and I'm just going to talk I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but this was something that the bipartisan infrastructure law had EPA develop. So it's basically just a web-based tool. It's the model recycling program toolkit. Like I said, it's a web-based tool, and it's really just to standardize terms and examples to describe materials that are accepted in programs, making sure that information is widely applied across different programs, includes best practices, has community self-assessment guidelines to identify any gaps that may exist, training modules, access to education materials, and a guide to measure the effectiveness of, and this is for like of a grant received under this program. So this is something that headquarters developed, but I can send out the link for this. And then we're just going to briefly go over battery collection and labeling guidelines. Okay, so there will be, I forget the dollar amount, but there will be battery collection money. But just to be clear, this is not a grant that anybody can apply for. This is money for EPA to be able to identify best practices that will focus on increasing accessibility to battery collection locations, promoting consumer education, and reducing improper disposal. The best practices are going to be technically and economically feasible, environmentally safe and sound, and beneficial to increasing recovery of critical minerals, which is one of our strategy series. Basically, we're going to create labeling guidelines for end-of-life batteries and provide communication materials to battery producers, consumers, and other stakeholders. So just to be clear, this is something that EPA is getting money on, and we will be developing materials on that we will be able to share with everyone.
Hi, good morning. This is Sharon. Before you leave the battery section, do you have a timeline on that?
Ooh, I don't know. Renee, do you know the answer for that?
I don't. I know work is ongoing, but I don't know what the timeline is to actually getting those products released. But as Jessica said, I believe it's 25 million. The BIL provided 25 million and directed EPA to do this. So yeah, so work is ongoing. More to come on it for sure. But we want to just make sure y'all were aware that it's in process.
No, that sounds great. And I guess that I'm biased. And if there were, I'm sure you think there's a possibility that there would be certain locations that would be, like if EPA starts, if you guys have this practice, do you think that there would be, a handful of locations that would be identified as to these are ideal places to actually do the collection? And
so EPA is not going to actually do battery collection, if that's sort of what you're thinking. It's going to be more guidelines, best practices, labeling, that kind of thing. We're not going to be, trying to start a collection program. One place to maybe, if you have some time, Department of Energy got a large amount of BIL funding also for batteries. And so there might be some overlap in the projects they do around materials management and circular economy. I don't know, what their vision is for batteries, but they might be the agency to look to for like the sort of big projects. So this is going to be more like we talked about, best practices and labeling.
Okay, no, that's helpful. Thank you. I'll check with Stevie.
Yeah, that was good to mention the Department of Energy. I know they are getting a lot of money for things like that. Okay, and then Robbie, do you want me to go over this slide or do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I can just run through it real quick, Jessica.
Okay.
So I'm also the regional manager for the pollution prevention program, and we have a number of P2 grants that cities would obviously be eligible for, and then the nonprofit eligibility varies depending on grants, but there is opportunities for nonprofits that aren't eligible for certain grants to partner with an eligible entity on grants, and we see that a lot. And in fact, in the coming year, we'll be encouraging more of that. But right now, we don't have any P2 grants open, but each year we have multiple P2 grant opportunities. And as with the solid waste and recycling program, we did get bill money. So this coming spring, we would anticipate that there will be our annual regular funding grant plus our bill grants going out in the spring. The difference between the two funding opportunities is that our regular annual grants that we have every year, they do require a match, but the bill grants do not require a match. And so that was, made some people who weren't typically interested in the P2 grant program more interested in it. So keep an eye on that. And then also here in Region 6, we have, under the P2 program, we have a really active Safer Choice lead. Melanie Lillard, she's not on the call today, but we can definitely get y'all in touch with her. And one of the focuses for Safer Choice in the coming year is to work with institutions, hospitals, schools, et cetera, on looking at replacing chemicals that they use daily, cleaning, especially in cleaning areas, to replace them with more environmentally friendly options under our Safer Choice labeling program. So if that's something that anyone on this call is interested in, we can get y'all in touch with Mel and she can help you out with that. But otherwise, just, the big thing is
I'll just
Go
jump
ahead.
in. That's definitely part of our work plan. We have talked to a few vendors and they kind of give us what they think is their environmentally preferred product. I would love to hear it from y'all. We need some like third party verification. And it is a huge list. So it's really just the volume of going through all these different chemicals of concern and cleaning supplies, pesticides. There's so much there. So we hadn't put it on our, Q1 work plan, but it's certainly something we want to get to. So if we can get some thoughtware on that, I would love, I'd love to not have to do all that research ourselves if someone else has been doing it. But we're absolutely interested.
Yeah, for sure, Mel can definitely get y'all in touch. We fund a technical service provider out of the University of Texas at Arlington who can provide information and case studies from other institutions. And then we also have a national P2 hub that does similar work. So we can definitely get you some case studies of other institutions that have followed this path, what worked, what didn't work, and new products coming out. Our technical service provider can provide information on that. So definitely someone who can narrow it down and give you kind of the facts based on EPA's view of what we consider to be a safer alternative. And not only for the general part of the hospitals, but also cafeterias, anywhere where you have food cleaning and servicing and cleaning and stuff like that. So it covers the whole spectrum. And we can definitely get y'all in touch with Mel. She would be very excited.
Yeah, that's great. I love even the wording Safer Choice. Because there's a thinking that a lot of these products are going to be more expensive. And first of all, I want to just vet that and see if that's even true. But the idea of it being safer is, aligns to our mission. So I think that this is the right kind of thinking, for alignment for us to pursue as a healthcare system. And
Sounds good.
helps a lot of our missions at once.
Yep. Yeah, and yeah, we'll that'll be exciting. I know Mel will look forward to that. So, Jessica, I don't have anything else on P2 if you want to go on to the next slide, unless anyone else has any other questions around P2.
This is Ron. One other thing, we've got a full agenda. So I just want to make sure that we're respectful of everyone's time. If the EPA could start summarizing their comments, it seems like a lot of what's directly relevant today is more for the city, given a lot of the funding is more government oriented. It seems like there's a substantial amount of opportunity still available for Ochsner as a nonprofit, partnering with municipalities, public-private partnerships, and just as importantly, facilitating this dialogue, which is all I really want to accomplish behind the scenes. But if we could summarize in the next 2 or 3 minutes, if that's okay, because I know there are some other speakers that would be appreciated, but this is great stuff.
Yeah, for sure, Jessica, if you want to kind of do that. And then, like you said, we can share this full slide deck, so that's no problem. And then we're available for any discussions post this webinar. We can set up calls and stuff like that. So Jessica, I'll turn it back over to you so you can wrap it up.
Yes, definitely. Okay. I'm not going to go through too much on this, but we do have information on how to apply for these grants. You do need to be registered with sam.gov. So if you have questions about that, email us. We'll help you with that. It's best to start early on this. You need this identification number to submit grants. And it can take like a month or more to get registered with this. Okay, let me go through. Okay, and this is just required forms. I'll let y'all read this when we send the slide deck around. And then just tips for writing grant application narratives. Okay, and these are resources. Again, we'll try to get everyone's contact information if you're comfortable with that and send you out these links so that you have them. Okay, and I will stop sharing my screen. And then here's also the contact information for me and Renee.